Daniel slammed the brakes so hard the tires screamed against the road. His phone had just played a voicemail he should have listened to 3 days ago. His wife's voice trembled through the speaker. "Daniel, someone is following me. Please pick up. I'm scared." The message ended with a loud bang, then silence. Daniel stared at the screen. 37 missed calls, all from Sarah, and now the police were calling his phone. Daniel's chest tightened, because 3 minutes earlier, an officer had left him a message that didn't make sense. "Mr. Daniel, we need you to come to the station immediately regarding your wife." Daniel whispered to himself, "Please don't let it be what I'm thinking." But deep down he already knew. 3 days earlier, Sarah had been begging him to answer, and he ignored every single call. 3 days earlier, Daniel sat at his desk staring at the promotion email that could change his life. His boss had finally said the words Daniel had been waiting to hear for months. "If you keep this level of dedication, the management position is yours." The salary would triple. The benefits would change everything. Daniel imagined the look on Sarah's face when he told her. No more worrying about rent. No more late-night arguments about bills. Everything would finally get better. His phone buzzed. Sarah calling. Daniel sighed and rejected the call. He needed to stay focused. His phone buzzed again. Sarah calling. He rejected it again. Then a message appeared. "Daniel, please pick up." He rolled his eyes. Sarah had been doing this a lot lately, calling during work hours, getting upset when he couldn't answer. But this promotion required complete focus. His boss had warned him, no distractions. So Daniel muted the phone and returned to work. An hour later, he checked the screen. 8 missed calls. He shook his head. "Sarah, seriously?" He typed a quick message. "Busy at work. I'll call you tonight." A few seconds later, the phone rang again. Sarah calling. Daniel clenched his jaw and declined the call. He whispered under his breath, "Why can't she just wait?" The phone buzzed again and again. By the end of the afternoon, there were 12 missed calls. Daniel felt irritated. He told himself she was probably upset about something small. Maybe the electricity bill again. Maybe the landlord. Maybe nothing serious at all. He packed his things and drove home. But when he opened the apartment door, something felt strange. The lights were off. Sarah usually greeted him at the door. He called her name. No answer. Daniel shrugged. Maybe she went to the store. His phone buzzed again. Sarah calling. He stared at it for a moment, then declined the call again. Enough already. He dropped the phone on the table and went to shower. When he came out 20 minutes later, the phone screen was glowing. 5 more missed calls. And a voice message. Daniel felt annoyed. He pressed play, but the message didn't start immediately. Just breathing. Then Sarah's voice. "Daniel, can you please call me?" Her voice sounded different. Quieter. Tense. "I just need to talk to you." The message ended. Daniel frowned. That didn't sound like the usual argument he expected. Still, he told himself it could wait. He was exhausted. He sat down on the couch and scrolled through his phone. Another message arrived. "Daniel, please answer." Then another. "I really need you right now." Daniel sighed. He typed back. "Relax. I'm home. Where are you?" The message showed delivered. But Sarah never replied. Daniel waited for a while. Then he convinced himself she must be visiting a friend. Maybe she was still upset. Maybe she just needed space. So Daniel turned off the lights and went to sleep. The next morning started with chaos at work. The company was preparing a major project. Everyone was under pressure. Daniel walked into the office and his boss immediately pulled him aside. "Today is important. I need full concentration." Daniel nodded. "I won't disappoint you." His phone vibrated in his pocket. Sarah calling. Daniel hesitated, then rejected the call. 5 minutes later, another call. He declined it again. 10 minutes later, another call. This time Daniel turned his phone face down, but the vibrations kept coming. By lunchtime, there were 21 missed calls. Daniel felt frustrated. He muttered to himself, "This is getting ridiculous." He stepped outside and finally texted her. "What is going on?" No response. 10 minutes later, the phone rang again. Sarah calling. Daniel stared at the screen. Something inside him said maybe he should answer. But his boss walked past him and gave him a look. Daniel declined the call again. He returned to his desk. The workday stretched into the evening. When Daniel finally finished, he checked his phone again. 27 missed calls. 3 voice messages. Daniel felt a small wave of guilt. But he told himself he would talk to her when he got home. He drove back to the apartment. The door was still locked. The lights were still off. Sarah still wasn't there. Daniel called her phone. It rang once, then went straight to voicemail. That's when a strange feeling crept into his stomach. But he pushed the thought away. Maybe her phone battery died. Maybe she stayed at a friend's place. Maybe she just needed time to cool down. Daniel tried to relax. He cooked dinner, watched television, checked his phone. Nothing. No messages. No calls. No Sarah. Hours passed. Daniel went to sleep feeling uneasy. He didn't realize it yet. But those missed calls were not arguments. They were not complaints. They were not random emotional moments. They were desperate attempts from someone who believed something terrible was about to happen. And Daniel had ignored every single one. If you've ever ignored a call from someone you love, you know how easy it is to think you'll just answer later. But sometimes later never comes. And Daniel was about to learn that lesson in the worst possible way. Because the next morning, the police were going to knock on his door. And the question they asked would change his life forever. Daniel woke up to the sound of heavy knocking on his door. At first he thought he was dreaming. Then the knocking came again. Harder. Louder. Daniel grabbed his phone from the bedside table. Still no messages from Sarah. His stomach tightened as he walked to the door. When he opened it, 2 police officers were standing outside. Their expressions were serious. One of them spoke first. "Are you Daniel?" Daniel nodded slowly. "Yes, is something wrong?" The officer glanced at his partner before continuing. "When was the last time you spoke with your wife, Sarah?" Daniel frowned. "Yesterday, I think." The officers exchanged a quick look. The second officer pulled out a small notebook. "Your wife was reported missing early this morning." Daniel felt a sudden wave of confusion. "Missing? That's correct." Daniel shook his head. "That doesn't make sense. She's probably with a friend." The officer continued speaking calmly. "Her coworker reported that she never showed up for work yesterday." Daniel's chest tightened. Yesterday? That meant she had been gone longer than he thought. He quickly grabbed his phone. "Wait, she called me yesterday." He opened the call log. 37 missed calls. The officer leaned closer to look. "What time were these calls made?" Daniel scrolled through them. "Morning, afternoon, late evening." He looked back at the officers. "She was calling me all day." The officer's expression changed slightly. "That's interesting." Daniel's voice grew tense. "What do you mean?" The officer closed his notebook slowly. "Because according to the timeline we currently have." He paused. "Your wife disappeared 2 nights ago." Daniel felt the air leave his lungs. That was impossible. "She called me yesterday." The officer spoke carefully. "We'll need you to come to the station to answer a few questions." Daniel nodded automatically. His mind was racing. Something about this didn't make sense. How could Sarah call him if she disappeared the night before? The drive to the police station felt endless. Daniel kept replaying the call log on his phone. Every missed call felt heavier now. Each one was a moment he had chosen work instead of answering. When they arrived, Daniel sat across from the officers in a quiet room. One of them placed a recorder on the table. "Mr. Daniel, we just want to understand what happened." Daniel nodded nervously. "Okay, tell us about your last interaction with your wife." Daniel explained the calls, the messages, the voicemail he hadn't listened to yet. The officers asked him to play it. Daniel hesitated, then pressed the play button. The room filled with the sound of breathing. Then Sarah's voice appeared. Weak, shaky. "Daniel, please answer." Her breathing sounded fast. "I think someone is following me." Daniel's hands started shaking. The officers leaned closer. Sarah continued speaking. "I tried calling you earlier. I don't know what to do." Then the sound of footsteps. Fast footsteps. Her voice became more desperate. "Daniel, if you hear this, please call me back." There was a loud noise in the background. Then the message cut off. The room fell silent. Daniel felt his chest tighten. He whispered to himself. She sounded scared. One officer spoke quietly. "What time was this voicemail sent?" Daniel checked the timestamp. 11:42 p.m. The officer leaned back in his chair. "That's strange." Daniel looked up. "Why?" The officer spoke slowly. "Because we believe your wife disappeared around 9 p.m. that night." Daniel blinked. "That can't be right." But the officer continued. "If she disappeared at 9 p.m., she couldn't have left a voicemail at 11:42. Daniel felt his heart begin to pound. "So what are you saying?" The officer answered calmly. "We're saying someone else may have had her phone." The room suddenly felt colder. Daniel's mind started racing. Who would have Sarah's phone? Why would they call him? Another officer spoke. "Do you know anyone who might want to harm your wife?" Daniel shook his head immediately. "No." But as soon as he said it, a thought flashed through his mind. A memory. A conversation from 2 weeks ago. Sarah had mentioned something strange. Someone watching her when she left work. Daniel remembered laughing it off. He had told her she was imagining things. Now that memory felt different. He swallowed hard. She did say something once. Both officers looked at him. What did she say? Daniel took a deep breath. She thought someone was following her. The officers exchanged another look. Did she describe the person? Daniel shook his head. No. She said she wasn't sure. One officer wrote something down, then asked another question. Who knew your daily schedule? Daniel frowned. What do you mean? Who knew when you were working late, when your wife would be alone? Daniel thought for a moment. Only a few people knew that. His boss, a few coworkers, and one other person, his best friend, Marcus. Marcus had helped Daniel get the job at the company. Marcus knew everything about Daniel's work schedule. He had even joked recently that Daniel was never home anymore. Daniel suddenly felt uneasy, but he pushed the thought away. Marcus had been his friend for years. There was no way. The officer interrupted his thoughts. Mr. Daniel, we're going to ask you something important. Daniel looked up. Okay. If someone used your wife's phone after she disappeared, they may have been trying to reach you for a reason. Daniel's voice trembled slightly. What kind of reason? The officer answered carefully. To make sure you didn't interfere. Daniel's stomach dropped. You mean, they didn't want me answering the phone? The officer nodded. It's possible. That thought hit Daniel like a truck. If he had answered one of those calls, he might have heard something. Something important. Something that could have saved Sarah. Daniel leaned forward in his chair, his voice barely a whisper. So you're saying? The officer finished the sentence for him. If you had answered, this situation might be very different right now. Daniel closed his eyes. The weight of those words crushed him. 37 missed calls. 37 chances. And he ignored everyone. But the investigation was far from over. Because while Daniel sat in that police station drowning in guilt, detectives were about to discover something in Sarah's apartment that would completely change the direction of the case. And when Daniel heard what they found, he would realize the danger had been closer than he ever imagined. While Daniel sat frozen in the police station, one of the detectives called another officer on the phone. Check her apartment. Carefully. Every detail, he said. Minutes later, Daniel watched through the window as the police drove toward his building. His chest felt tight. Something told him what they might find, but he didn't want to admit it. The detective returned, holding a small, worn notebook. This was found in Sarah's apartment, he said. Daniel's hands shook as the officer handed him the notebook. He opened it slowly. The pages were filled with neat handwriting, small notes detailing her daily routines, places she had been, and names of people she interacted with. But the last few pages were different. They were frantic. Sarah had written repeatedly, I think someone is watching me. I don't feel safe. I tried calling Daniel, but he won't answer. Daniel's heart pounded. Then he saw the final page. A name, scribbled repeatedly. Marcus. His best friend. The man who had helped him get the promotion. The man who knew his schedule down to the minute. Daniel's stomach turned cold. Marcus, he whispered. It can't be. The detective noticed his reaction. Do you know him well? Daniel swallowed hard. He's my best friend. The detective nodded. He had access to both your routines and, apparently, your wife's movements. And someone who knew that could plan everything to avoid being caught, while keeping you unaware. Daniel's mind raced. Every missed call, every ignored message, every moment he thought he was busy, suddenly felt like a lifetime of lost chances. He remembered the voicemail. Sarah's voice shaking, desperate. Daniel, if anything happens to me, don't trust. The recording had cut off mid-sentence. Daniel's hands trembled. His eyes darted to the officers. She was about to name someone? Yes, the detective said quietly. And we believe that last name was Marcus. Daniel closed his eyes. The guilt was suffocating. All the calls he ignored, thinking they were interruptions, were warnings. Every one of them was a desperate attempt to reach him before it was too late. He felt tears sting his eyes. Could I have done something? He asked. Answered even one call. The detective was silent. Then he said, softly, we can't know that. But what we do know is that someone close to you may have betrayed that trust. Daniel nodded slowly, a cold realization settling over him. Marcus had known the schedule. Marcus could have manipulated everything. And Daniel had been too focused on his promotion to notice. The investigation continued late into the night. Daniel was questioned repeatedly. Every detail, every interaction, every choice he had made over the past 3 days was scrutinized. He realized, painfully, how fragile life could be, how one moment of distraction could change everything. And he replayed that voicemail endlessly in his mind. The desperation in Sarah's voice, the fear, the sense of being hunted. Every word felt heavier now. And yet, Daniel knew the story wasn't over. The detectives were closing in on the truth. But in that moment, he felt the crushing weight of his own actions. He hadn't only ignored calls, he had ignored warnings, cries for help, chances to save the person he loved most. Hours later, Daniel was alone in the interrogation room, staring at the wall. He took out his phone and scrolled through the missed calls once more. 37 missed chances. 37 moments he could have changed everything. He felt the full weight of regret crush him. Then his phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number. You need to know the truth. Meet at the bridge at midnight. Come alone. Daniel froze. His mind raced. Marcus? Or someone else? The decision he made in the next few minutes would determine everything. What he discovered could finally reveal the full truth. Daniel arrived at the bridge just before midnight. The wind blew cold across the river, the city lights shimmering in the water below. A figure emerged from the shadows. It was Marcus. Daniel's voice trembled. Why, Sarah? Marcus didn't answer immediately. He looked at Daniel, a strange mix of guilt and defiance in his eyes. You weren't supposed to know, Marcus said finally. I tried to protect you, but she got involved in something she shouldn't have. Daniel felt his knees weaken. Protect me? You killed her. Marcus shook his head. No, not like that. But you ignored every call, every message. She needed help, and you weren't there. She trusted you. And now, his voice trailed off. Daniel's heart pounded. Every second, the memory of that voicemail played in his head. Daniel, if anything happens to me, don't trust. He realized the truth. The last word she tried to speak was a warning. A warning Daniel had missed. The wind howled. Daniel's mind was spinning. If he had only answered one call, if he had only listened, maybe Sarah would still be alive. Maybe everything could have been different. But now, all he had were missed calls, broken trust, and a truth that would haunt him forever. If Daniel had answered just one call, Sarah might still be alive. But here's the question for you. Do you think Marcus planned everything? Or was Daniel himself the real target? Type * friend or Daniel in the comments. If this story shocked you and made you think about the moments you take for granted, like this video. Subscribe so you don't miss the next story that will challenge everything you think you know about trust, choices, and fate. And if you've ever ignored a call from someone you love, share your story in the comments. Because sometimes, one small decision changes everything.